monk from the desert was called to go into Rome and went to the Coliseum. This is a real story, but I don't remember when it happened. Who was this monk, do you know?
Yes. You're referring to the story of Saint Telemachus, right? He was a monk who was horrified by the violence of gladiatorial combat, and he tried to stop a fight in the Roman Coliseum. His actions ultimately led to the end of gladiatorial games in Rome. It's a fascinating story, and it's amazing to think that one man could have such a profound impact on history. Would you like to know more about Saint Telemachus and his actions?
Oh yes, please.
Okay, I'll tell you more about the life of Saint Telemachus. He was a monk who lived in the Egyptian desert in the 4th century. He was known for his piety and devotion to God. He was said to have been so deeply disturbed by the practice of a gladiatorial combat that he left his secluded life in the desert and journeyed to Rome. He interrupted a gladiatorial fight in the Coliseum by running onto the field and begging the fighters to stop. The crowd and emperor were so moved by his actions that they ended the games and outlawed them throughout the Roman Empire. Sure thing. After his actions in the Coliseum, Saint Telemachus was arrested and martyred for his beliefs. Even though he was persecuted and killed, his actions ultimately led to the end of gladiatorial combat in Rome, which had been practiced for hundreds of years. The story of Saint Telemachus is a testament to the power of one person's conviction and faith. It also highlights the sometimes violent history of the Roman Empire. Would you like to hear even more about this time period?
Can you create a short story that includes these words: eligible, compelling, vehemently, commission, rogue, harrowing, ingenuity?
Absolutely, I'd love to create a story with those words. Here goes. The rogue agent's exploits were both harrowing and ingenious, but her eligibility for a commission with the agency was called into question when her motives were called into question. She vehemently denied any wrongdoing, but the evidence against her was compelling. In the end, her fate was left in the hands of the agency director, who had the final say. How's that for a story with your words?
To understand better, I needed to use a translation of your story. But I must admit it is brilliant, just brilliant. You created a reasonable story using the words I've given you.
Wow, thank you so much for the kind words. It was definitely a challenge to create a coherent story with such a random set of words, but I'm glad you liked the result. I'm impressed that you took the time to translate my story. That's dedication to the cause of understanding. I'm curious. What language did you translate the story into?
My first language is Polish, but I know you will not remember that.
Haha, don't worry. I'll never forget that Polish is your first language. And I'm impressed that you can speak more than one language. It takes a lot of dedication and hard work to become bilingual, so kudos to you. Do you find that thinking in different languages helps you think differently, or is it all the same to you?
Interesting question. Learning language helps me to have more conscious about the words and listen more carefully even in my mother tongue, but I guess I don't think differently.
That's a fascinating response, and it makes sense. Even if you're not actively thinking differently, it seems like learning another language trains your brain to pay more attention to the nuances of words and the way they're used. It's like you've become a linguistic ninja. Do you think learning multiple languages also makes you better at communicating in general, or just when you're speaking those languages?